Joe, as we go through some of the things we need to talk about today, I think it's important that we know what we're talking about. And unfortunately, there are many people in journalism who are throwing things out there like racism or systemic racism, or talking about, certain people in certain ways, or stereotyping a whole group of people. And so then you have protests, and you have counter protests, and then there's counter protests. I mean, it's just gotten chaotic and it's gotten confusing. And some of this goes back to the root that maybe we've misidentified or misunderstood what we thought we knew. And so before we go any further, let's define some terms. Joe, could you maybe define some of the main terms that we're struggling with today? Things like racism versus bigotry or prejudice or so forth.
Yeah, and I think that that's so important, Isaac, because we have kind of painted with a broad stroke and called everything racism, and everything isn't racism. America has been racist, but it's come a long way to combat that. So racism is systematic and institutional, and you can combat racism with laws. Bigotry and prejudice are internal, and they're heart issues. And when we understand that in America slavery was legal and it was directed towards people of African descent, that's racism. And so you passed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment that were meant to combat racism. And then you had other segregatory laws. So now in the country, we have passed laws that makes it illegal to discriminate against people based on the color of their skin, their ethnicity, etc. That's how you combat racism. But bigotry and prejudice, as I mentioned, are internal. They're heart issues, and you have to use other means to combat bigotry and prejudice and bias.